I have a confession to make. I am a fraud. Despite having amassed 500,000 views on YouTube as a movie reviewer, all spread very, very evenly across all of my videos, as you can see, I haven't seen any anime. Ever. No movies, definitely no TV shows, nothing. And at the very start of this series, I said that I planned to keep it that way. But then I was like, you know what? Why not? It's worth risking a little bit of wasted time for the chance that there's some part of Studio Ghibli I actually like, and given everything everyone's ever said about it, that chance seems pretty damn high. And I mean, how many pre-2000 movies could they possibly made? Oh, they made 12. Well, this is coming out in November. Wahoo!
Where are you going, General George?
I'm off to fight at Valley.
The very first anime I'll ever see. Nausicaä of the Valley, of the Wind. She's from two places, I guess. I'm gonna do something different this time and try to predict the plot of each movie before I see it, which could be interesting. I have no clue what any of these movies are about, so Spirited Away, I'm guessing she goes away on a journey. The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, I'm guessing there's a princess named Kaguya and it's about her tale. Kiki's Delivery Service, a girl who starts a post office. That one's probably not right, because that sounds super boring. I know some of them are fantasy, and Valley of the Wind kind of sounds like that, so my guess is that there's a girl with magic airbending powers who goes on a quest to do something. So, let's watch it, and then I'll be back. This should not be your introduction to anime. This movie is kind of incredibly bad. I have no clue what I just watched. It's not even like I hate it. I feel nothing toward it, but that's kind of the problem. But to be fair, there are some good things about this movie. For example, I think I can get used to this animation style. The characters have sharper outlines, and every man in this movie has this, huge Lorax mustache, and, I'm not gonna pretend like that isn't weird, but on the flip side, the backgrounds look super good. The toxic forest looks cool as hell, the blue color scheme in some places keeps it from being boring, well, for a little bit, and so many of the insects have these, insane designs. And I like the designs of the airships, too. There are just a lot of them. And also, the music is, disproportionately good. It's some of the best movie music I've ever heard. Sometimes it sounds like Lord of the Rings, sometimes it sounds really creepy and undulaty, sometimes it sounds classical and sweeping and majestic, and sometimes it sounds like a video game. The soundtrack is legitimately the best part, and that's helped by the fact that everything else kinda sucks. What even happens in this movie? I get that they had to do a lot of world building, right? Yeah, that's not an excuse. Not everything about this world has to be crystal clear, but I still would have liked them to have discussed a higher quantity of just basic stuff. If I ever fully knew what was going on, I probably would have liked the movie more. Don't believe me? Who are the bad guys? Where did they come from? What do they want? Who is she? Why does she not have limbs? We have, a surface level knowledge of that stuff, but it's not like I remember what any of them look like, or their names, or just who they are. And the limb thing, I think, goes unexplained entirely, but I don't know, I kinda zoned out. I'm just not invested now. Or what about this guy? Well, he's from before, and someone found him somewhere, and the bad guys want him because boom. And the good guys don't want the bad guys to have him because they don't want boom. Or here's something else. If these bug things get mad, they'll run into a city and somehow set the whole thing on fire and destroy it. I mean, they look really cool, but I feel like I don't have to explain my slight confusion there. Also, who is this guy? He sure seems important, but I do not know a goddamn thing about him. I don't know, but I think I'd rather have more time be dedicated to learning stuff about the people in the movie than the names and lore of 5 different fictional countries we never even get to see. My favorite scene in the movie is in the ice cave, not because it's some beautiful moment, which a lot of people say it is, but because Nausicaä just sits there and explains why the forest is there. It's the only time in the whole 2-hour movie where I ever knew what the hell was going on. And to make matters worse, the movie's just kind of boring. There's some good parts. There are a couple of moments capitalized, which is something I talked about during the Prince of Egypt segment last video. Just stuff where there isn't a lot happening, and the animation and the music need to work together to create some movie magic and make us say, wow, I like that. And there are a couple of nice scenes that help contribute to some sort of humans destroying the environment theme. Actually, I thought the reason why the forest is there was pretty clever and made a lot of sense. And even though Nausicaä doesn't have a single trait except that everybody loves her and looks up to her for some reason, and also at one point she shoves this Pokemon down her bra, she never brings up how strong and independent she is, which how do we justify this movie's existence because we ran out of original ideas a long time ago? Disney definitely would have done. I think all of those things are good, except the Pokemon thing. Problem is, anything that isn't what I just listed is so agonizingly boring. The characters kind of just wander around for 2 hours, interspersed with like 5 different uninteresting sky battles, which is crazy, because they're sky battles. How do you even do that? They're sky battle, and the climax is like 40 minutes long. The end of it was cool, but the rest was her getting kidnapped or something, and then unkidnapping herself, and then I don't even know what happens after that. Suffice to say, I was ready to be done well before it was ready to be done. Whatever, bro. I'm gonna put it like below Fantasia and above the Three Caballeros, which like, yeah, that's impossibly low, and I'll probably change it later, maybe, but even though we've seen other boring movies so far, very few have been this long, and when a movie is just overwhelmingly uninteresting, I don't really care how much it does right. But those right things are there, even though this is a movie where I don't know the plot, and it's twice as long as it needs to be, and every single thing that wasn't transcendently magnificent made me want to fall asleep. It's also a movie that looks really good, has a soundtrack that I'd unironically listen to on my own, and I couldn't think of a third thing to put in this spot. To me, it just doesn't make a difference though. You can tell effort was put in, which is why I feel so bad about putting it like basically at the bottom. But with that being said, I've never loved science fiction or dystopia, and this to me just felt like the worst parts of both. I've never loved the ranking part, maybe I should finally reorder some stuff, but I will say, I am excited to see what those magical moments look like in the context of an actually decent movie. Hopefully this ages amazingly, and the next one is fantastic, and this is the worst one in the video. Yeah, I know, I probably just jinxed myself. Whatever, we have like 11 more chances.
My friends are all minors, they can take care of themselves. I wouldn't worry about them if I were you.
One more fantasy movie, I guess. Castle in the Sky, and I know that it just so happens to be the exact same length, so that's fun. Prediction time. This is all improvised, can you tell? I feel like it won't actually be in the sky and it's just a metaphor or something, but I don't really know. That's all I got. Before we watch it though, I have to ask, I wonder if Studio Ghibli really does have its own feel, or if it has a whole bunch of different feels. At the very least, I know there are multiple styles of animation that Ghibli does, but that's not really anything new, and to be fair, not all Disney movies have the same vibe either, so I guess we're just gonna have to find out. Anyway, let's watch this one. I have to say, Castle in the Sky is not as good as the last movie. It's even better. Oh my god, why is this movie so much fun? I mean, it's technically steampunk, but I wouldn't really consider it that at all. I don't really know what it is, except for a really good movie, which it absolutely is. This is a rare movie where I didn't dislike a single character. I mean, the main villain guy, whose name I already forgot, may not have been the most compelling person ever, but it's not like I hated him. The two main characters have so much more personality, especially the guy, and I'll admit that I actually laughed a couple of times at some of the jokes. Not a full-out guffaw, of course, but a slight exhale through the nose, which, let's be honest, is almost the same. This movie is a comedy, and you can't change my mind. The secret agents and the government were probably the least interesting part of the movie, and Mark Hamill here had a semi-cool backstory that didn't really get expanded on, but that didn't bother me too much. It would have been better if he had a more solid motivation than become king for the sake of becoming king, which sounds familiar for a good reason, but it's not like the fact that that didn't happen ruined my experience or anything. Again, if he was a twist villain and that was his motivation, it would be kinda flimsy, but we're all already on the same page about that, and I'm not sure if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I like the pirates too. The idea of the main pirate being the only harsh one and the rest of them are just her stupid children is funny to me, and a lot of the best moments come from them, and then they ended up teaming up with the main characters, which is another cool thing that happens sometimes, and we get like 10 minutes of them just flying together so we can learn more about them, and you know what? I think it worked, because I did kinda care about all of them, and by the end, I liked them a lot. Although there was that weird bit with all of the 30-year-old guys trying to win the 15-year-old main character's favor by helping her in the kitchen, which did, in fact, happen. It's also the only thing that made me laugh out loud because it's absolutely ridiculous. It's times like this that I remember that the age of consent in Japan is 13. Oh yeah, and there's this kooky old man who sounds like Master Oogway and talks to Doerksen, probably has some obscure force powers. I wish he came back, kinda. The music is by Joe Hisaishi again, I learned who it is now, and every single song in this movie fits perfectly just like they did in the last movie. I'm serious, I don't think these movies would be as magical if they didn't have Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Mozart, Beethoven in the background at all times. Also, this movie kept my interest way more. Like, the middle half of the movie dragged a little bit, but the first and last quarters had me fully invested. Like, I don't even think I blinked during the entire scene of them exploring the gardens. These iron golem things just make the castle feel like a whole other world, which I guess it kinda is. Instead of a bunch of sky battles that all look the same, well, okay, we get one, but it's interesting this time. This movie has like a bunch of interesting action set pieces that fit with the world and make the actual fights way more entertaining, like a robot tearing apart a government castle. Yes, the government has a castle, that on its own is cool. Or the two main characters trying to flee the city on a train and the pirates following them on the tracks in a carriage. Is this absolutely ridiculous? Well, of course, but who says that's a bad thing? We don't learn what the crystal does, or what the pirates want, or who this girl is, or why the army's here, what the castle has to do with anything, or why the hell Teddy Roosevelt cameos in this movie, until like halfway through. That's the thing that makes it different from Nausicaä. We learn at some point. And honestly, that was the best way to do it here. There is no need for clunky exposition while running away from the bad guys. All of that can happen afterward in its own time, and more importantly, it did. I actually know what the plot to this movie is. This movie is just really well paced and knows what to do and when to do it, and I think that's just one of the things that affects how much I like something the most. Hey, one more thing. This movie looks so good. Like, same as the last one, but here, it's like in a good movie. I prefer these character designs to the ones in the last movie. Both main characters look more like what I view now as the anime look. Not that I have any clue what that even means, since this is the second anime thing I've ever seen. But with that being said, I know that Mark Hamill is absolutely an anime villain. Look at this guy. His eyes are orange. Even I know what that means. And the pirate mom has pink hair, and I have no idea why. I have nothing to add to that. I just felt like I had to mention it. I will say that their faces convey a lot of emotion, and it helps with a lot of wordless storytelling when it's needed. I'm kind of surprised how well both of these movies have been able to do stuff without talking, and in the case of the last movie, the exact opposite as well. Interestingly, no one really felt the need to verbally express all of their feelings in this movie. Seriously though, after watching this movie, I have kind of just accepted that Ghibli is the master of showing off these beautiful places without any dialogue, and the places are beautiful. We didn't really see that much steampunk technology outside of the ships, but the stuff we did see was still really creative. I was definitely more immersed in this world than I was in the Nausicaä one. It just feels bigger and more real to me because the stuff we saw. In that one, we heard about all of these great places and barely saw any of them. We don't hear about anything here. We see a mining settlement, the village where the miners live tucked between two mountains, with some houses even on the mountains. Even the insides of the buildings have stuff in them that add to the world that we see. And look at the castle. It's in the sky. It's not figurative. It is literally in the sky. I don't think I need to say anything. I'm just gonna keep showing you shots of the castle and the gardens. Look. And more importantly, look at this egg. I really want to eat that egg. This movie looked really good. Even though the government stuff was significantly lamer than the rest, so much of this movie is just legitimately magical, which is what everyone always says about this studio, but now I'm actually willing to get on board with that. It doesn't try to be too serious and has a lot of fun, but it can be emotional when it needs to be. It looks amazing. I like basically every character, and I can't really think of anything wrong with it, except for the fact that the actress for the girl is half Kiwi, and every so often her New Zealand accent will come out and jump scare you. And so it goes below Aladdin and above Dumbo. Despite how absolutely broken my list is at this point, it was pretty easy to place. Very good, but could still be marginally better if the middle part was slightly more interesting. I was supposed to rearrange my list at the end of the last episode. I totally forgot, so now I don't know what to do. Again, I should probably reorder it soon. Do I like anime yet? Well, I think it's still too early to tell, but wow, this movie is very charming and very fun, and I want to watch more now.
What are you trying to just break me down in the driveway? Why you want to break your father down like that?
Piece by piece, Studio Ghibli is winning me over, and after the last one, I gotta say, I am sufficiently hyped to see some more cool stuff. But we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer for that, because we need to take a break to go cry in a corner real quick. So I happen to already know what Grave of the Fireflies is about, and how it ends, so that kinda sucks, because I'm pretty sure that's the point of the movie. But I expect that it'll crush my soul anyway, so... Yeah, I'm kind of depressed now. I do think I would be impacted way more if I didn't already know the ending, so that's kind of annoying. But with that being said, it's not like I was completely emotionless during those last couple of scenes. The entire movie builds up to that, and I have enough soul left from Thumbelina to still feel something. Back in my last video during the Toy Story 2 segment, I did a whole tangent about how Pixar movies make you cry by playing a song when something happy is happening, and then playing again when something sad that's related to it is happening, making the audience think back to all of the good memories, and then they become super duper sad. And I'm sure you can guess why I'm bringing this up. I said there that it would come back soon, and it has, almost immediately. Obviously, this movie doesn't really do it with songs, but that doesn't stop literally the entire thing from carrying out the same idea. We spend 80 minutes getting to know these siblings and watching them try to survive with nowhere to live and nothing to eat after America firebombed their whole town, and then we spend the last 10 in just like total despair, and that last part could not have happened without all of the stuff before it. Watching Shada try to give Setsuko some sort of childhood, even when everything is crumbling around them, is just sad. But what's even sadder is that I don't know how to pronounce any of these names, so I'm gonna warn you about that right now. Anyway, he's trying to shield her from all of these terrible things around them, and tries to keep from her that their mom is dead. The saddest part of the movie is when Setsuko says that she knows their mom is dead, and so he just breaks down and cries, because no matter how hard he tried, he wasn't able to keep it from her. Bro, come on! We can feel how much strength it's taking him to keep her happy, physically and mentally. We can feel how much danger both of them are in, and as soon as we care about them as much as possible, the end happens. I'm not spoiling how it ends, actually. Not here, although you can probably guess, but I will encourage all of you to watch it, because this movie is probably the most effective anti-war thing ever, just in history, but it still feels like a Ghibli movie too. The animation still gives us wordless moments that amplify every aspect of their story, and it lets us feel everything that they feel without taking impossible amounts of time to know every aspect of them. This movie is actually pretty short. I was expecting this to be mostly brown and gray, and even though it does have its fair share of that, a majority of the scenes are actually really colorful, and I think that's because that's how Shada wants his sister to see things. Sure, there are some absolutely miserable moments, but that just makes the small, bright, happy moments even more important, and by golly, by goodness, the movie has good music. I can't believe it. And also, have you noticed that all three of these movies have some sort of nuclear weapon in them? Of course, we don't see the one in this movie, but like, we obviously all know it's there. I just think that that's interesting. Miyazaki has said that his first memories are of decimated towns, and after everything I've seen so far, that makes a lot of sense. I don't really feel the need to talk about this movie for too long. It really isn't that complex. There are no supervillains, there are no magic powers, there are no huge expansive worlds, and there is no Queen of England. Actually, there really isn't anymore. Grave of the Fireflies is very simple, but that simpleness is what makes it so effective. Even though I knew how the movie goes before I watched it, that didn't really stop me from sympathizing with either of them or being sad when the end of the movie did what the end of the movie does. And it wasn't boring at all, which I definitely thought it was gonna be. This is just a good movie that knows what it is and what it wants to say, and I think everyone should watch it at least once. I'm gonna put it below Sleeping Beauty and above Pocahontas 2. I would put it below Pocahontas 2, maybe, but it felt illegal, and so it's here. Still a very, very good movie, just not in the same way as a lot of the others we've seen. I'm absolutely miserable at the moment, but I guess that's a good thing. Is My Neighbor Totoro another fantasy one? I can't really handle more misery at the moment. Oh, predictions, right. My predictions are that there's a random girl who's not like the others who meets her neighbor Totoro, who has magic powers, and together they do... I don't know, my creativity ends there, so I guess I'll be back then.
He's your very best friend.
It's a sign that a movie's pretty good when it's considered a hot take to say that it's just okay. So here's the thing. My Neighbor Totoro is okay. Some of it's even great, but I wouldn't say it's the best Ghibli movie or anything like that. I can say that with confidence, even with this being my fourth one ever out of like 20. I watched the whole thing, and I didn't really like it that much, and after I learned that everybody else thinks it's some sort of holy grail, I kind of freaked out and decided to rewatch it, and this time, knowing what was coming, I liked it more. Not a lot more, but more. Let's be fair, this movie is insanely good at being what it is. I just happen to like what other types of movies are a bit more. For one, this has one of the most realistic and best family dynamics out of anything I've ever seen. Satsuki and Mei aren't particularly complex, but they're like 11 and 4, so that's okay. They both act their age, and all of their mannerisms show that super well, like them running around the house trying to find the upstairs, and Mei basically just following Satsuki around and repeating what she says. That is something 4-year-olds do, and Mei is cute, although she does have an absolutely gigantic mouth, which makes her look like a toad in every scene. It doesn't affect my enjoyment of the movie at all, I just think it's hilarious. The end of the movie could have dipped into cliche third act breakup territory if the argument that started it didn't feel like a real argument between a 4-year-old who's upset about how unfair it is she has to wait to see her mom and an 11-year-old who has to be the adult anytime their dad is away and is feeling the stress of that. Speaking of their dad, he's probably the greatest dad of all time, just ever, except for my dad, of course, in case he's watching this. I'm just kidding, there's no chance he made it this far into a video about anime. Anyway, he's just super supportive of his kids. When they can't find Mei, the first time, not the second time, instead of scolding her when he finds her, he just says, wow, this is a great hiding spot. And when Mei tells him about how she saw Totoro, he doesn't say anything like, don't be stupid, spirits aren't real, you idiot. Not like that, but you know what I mean. He just tells her, you're very lucky, and then he shows both of them the forest and tells them stories about it. And even if in the future the kids stop believing in spirits and think they dreamt the whole movie or something, what they will remember is just how supportive and good their dad was. I'm basically Cinema Therapy's PR team at this point, but if you want a deeper dive into any of this part of the movie, they have a video on it, like they have a video about everything. And I love all of the spirits. I like how they have roots in Japanese mythology. They do, don't they? And the designs for all of them are just perfect. Totoro is just a 7-foot squishmallow, and both it and the cat bust somehow look creepy, but in a cute way. It has something to do with the smiles and the teeth, I don't know. These guys are by far the best part of the movie, and that's where one of my problems with it comes in. They're barely even in it. Totoro is in the name of the movie, and he shows up 4 times. The first time he doesn't really do anything, and same with the last time, he just calls the cat bus, but those middle 2 times are by far the best scenes in the movie. The Wind Forest is such a good song, and its inclusion in the tree growing scene just elevates that whole thing to another level. I just kinda think the movie would be better if the main character's neighbor, Totoro, was really in it. But obviously there are other good songs too. I don't know how, but somehow this one perfectly encapsulates what doing chores on a farm in the Japanese countryside sounds like. Speaking of which, I just really like the aesthetic of this movie. Some of the forest trails kind of remind me of The Fox and the Hound, and combined with the houses, both inside and outside, along with the rice fields and the hospital and the school and the bus stop, you can get a pretty good feel of what life is just like here. At the start, I said that this movie was really good at being what it is, but what is that? Alice in Wonderland. That's what it is, and not just because a girl falls down a rabbit hole into a magic hollow and wakes back up outside and it's unclear if she dreamt it or not, and also not because there's a creepy, smiling, unblinking cat, but because there's essentially no plot. Things kind of just happen in this movie in a semi-sequential order, followed by something that kind of is plot at the very end, and then it ends. Now, I didn't like Alice in Wonderland. I thought it was super bad. It felt way too disjointed, and it felt like a huge excuse to just show off animation, which is something I just do not like in movies. It's pretty much the epitome of a Phase 1 movie, and I don't know how many times I've explained this at this point, so here you go. I made this just for you. Don't take this the wrong way, but I think My Neighbor Totoro is just a good version of Alice in Wonderland. Not in what it's about, but how it's presented. Not that much happens in this movie, and none of the characters go through huge arcs or anything. There aren't any advanced themes, there aren't any big messages, and there is no Queen of... I'm not making that joke again. It's just a happy movie that's glad to show you some nice pictures and some nice music with some nice creatures, and honestly, I'm fine with that here, because this movie succeeded in basically every place that Alice in Wonderland failed, even though they are, on a base level, kinda just the same thing. And so, on my new 4-column ranking layout, because we've passed 75 movies, it goes below Lion King 2 and above Frosty the Snowman, which is basically above King of Thieves because Frosty barely counts, which is the same thing I said when I put Lion King 2 there a couple videos ago. I might raise it a spot later, I'm not sure, but I suspect this movie gets better with time, the anti-Nausicaä, if you will. This definitely isn't my favorite Ghibli movie, and I don't really think it ever will be, but after watching it a second time, I can at least see how some other people feel that way. Something that's pure happy, happy, happy is better than something that's pure sad, sad, sad after all. And even though there are a couple moments where we can see through the shell of happiness this movie exists inside, and even though a lot of it is just waiting for Totoro to show up again, it's still a very cute movie, and I'm glad I watched it. I just probably won't pick this Ghibli movie to rewatch first. I mean, if I really want to be happy but also want a movie with a good story and characters with arcs, I'll just watch over the hedge.
Right you are, Harry.
No post on Sunday.
Real talk, I'm kind of excited for this one. I don't want to have super high expectations, God knows that's backfired horribly in the past, literally God knows, but still, isn't this like the super good one? I don't know, I'm pretty sure this is the one with the girl who can fly on a broomstick. Not sure how that fits in with her lifelong dream of starting a post office, which I still want to be the plot of this movie, but I guess we'll find out. This is the best one so far. I could stop there, but I'm obviously not gonna do that. Dude, this is what I wanted out of anime and just never expected to get. This movie is awesome. It's so good, man. When the movie started and everyone was talking about how Kiki was going off to do a year of witch training, I was pissed off because I thought that this was just gonna be a worse version of Harry Potter. But I'm happy to say that that isn't what the movie is about at all. Kiki's Delivery Service is exactly what it says on the tin. A movie about a girl's delivery service. And it's officially one of the best movies I've ever seen. Last video I said how the fact that I watched The Prince of Egypt twice in a row was a sign of how good it was. Well, guess what? I watched this one twice too. Remember how the last movie had basically no plot or character to be seen? Yeah, those things are back now. I like the characters in this movie even more than the ones in Castle in the Sky. In fact, it's probably not even close. And even though the plot is pretty basic, that's fine because the characters basically are the plot. The first half of this movie is Kiki finding her footing in a brand new place and making all sorts of new friends, and the second half is her dealing with her own issues and getting advice and support from those friends. And along the way, she learns a couple of things about life too, and also 9/11, but this movie came out in 1989, so that's not their fault. Also, I'm recording this on 9/11, so that wasn't even planned. It's just the way things turned out. Oh well, Kiki is the best main character so far in this video. She's just such a full person. She's like the exact opposite of the girls from the last movie, don't at me. There's just so much to her, and every time something new crops up, we feel exactly what she's feeling. I'm glad I didn't know she's voiced by Mary Jane until I was already done watching it.
This isn't about you. This is about me.
Speaking of Spider-Man, you know how he had that thing where he lost faith in himself and lost his powers? That happens in this movie too, just better. Her whole struggle in the latter half of the movie is that she used to love flying, but when it became her job, she just stopped liking it. At the start of the movie, when she first got to the city, she was so eager to talk to new people and she was so positive about everything. Hey, maybe there aren't any witches here yet. But as her time there gets more difficult and her deliveries start taking up more and more of her time, this thing she used to love started becoming more of a burden than anything. By the 1 hour mark, she's had to mature so much in such a short time that she's essentially forgotten what it was even like to enjoy flying. And now she basically has to reverse engineer what she even loved about it in the first place. In other words, burnout. Kiki's Delivery Service, at its core, is a movie about coping with burnout, so it's no surprise that I related to it. It doesn't take much research to notice that my upload schedule is not very frequent. With that being said, it's cool how I never would have seen this movie if it weren't for YouTube, but it's also the fact that I do YouTube that helped me connect to it this much. Even when you can't for the life of you remember what even inspired you in the first place, that inspiration still exists somewhere. It has to. There are still positives to whatever you used to like that you used to think about and have forgotten. They're the things that originally got you into that hobby. And in Kiki's case, one of those things is quite literally the friends she made along the way. Every friend that she made as a result of her flying all contribute to her regaining her motivation somehow. One friend in particular, hearing unnamed artist girl talk about what it takes for her to continue to create art had me rethinking my entire life. Well, maybe not my entire life. I've learned a thing or two about burnout in the last year and a half. Mainly, don't push it. Get up and try, and if after 5 minutes you still can't be bothered, then just do like a coloring page on your phone or something. Practice piano, read a book, play Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, the best platformer to ever grace this planet, or Super Mario Bros. Wonder, depending on how long this video takes to come out. Whatever you like, because liking it is the whole point. Also, I kinda love the baker lady. One of the best cliches is the very strong motherly woman who owns some sort of store and takes in the main character. And not only is Osono perfectly summed up by that, but she's also just a happy person. They never indulge themselves in an argument between her and Kiki. She's just a nice, kind person until the end of the movie. But other than that, Tombo is also hilarious because he always says exactly the wrong thing and doesn't know it, but then Kiki gets to know him better and realizes she likes to spend time with him. This old lady, who we'll talk about more later, has a really interesting message about how as new ways to do things are discovered, people will forget about the old ways, like how to use a wood stove after the invention of the oven, and I already said that the artist girl is a good character. Basically, there's not a single bad person in this movie. Even Osono's silent husband has a few good moments. And okay, I can't do this anymore, I need to talk about the city. This is hands down the most lived in, most beautiful animated place I've probably ever seen. Probably one of the most real feeling places I've seen in all of fiction. Hell, it feels more real than every Mario Kart 8 city track combined, and those are real places. None of the movies we've seen so far have really had huge cities like this, not modern day ones anyway. Oliver and Company and Troll and Central Park do not count, and I might be forgetting something, but Kuriko goes so well with the big bright colors of the sky and the ocean that these movies have been using, and there's so much detail packed into every little corner. The cars on the road that have a whole bunch of distinct colors, the people on the sidewalks who have a whole bunch of distinct faces and outfits, even the names of buildings which have a whole bunch of distinct styles. I want to live here. I can easily imagine what it's like to live here. And in case anyone's confused, Kuriko is not a real place. You can't go there. The internet says that they took photographs of Stockholm and Visby, which are both in Sweden. It also contains elements of Lisbon, Paris, San Francisco, and Milan. It takes place in an alternative 1950s Europe where the world wars never happened. I'm just gonna ignore the implications of that last part and say that this place is quite literally the best parts of everywhere on Earth. And the music is great again, and if it were a movie from any other studio, it would be revolutionary how good this soundtrack is. I guess it's a testament to Joe's magnificence that this level of quality has happened 5 out of 5 times, and this is the best one so far. Again, it's really not close. A Town with an Ocean View is right up there with Deliver Us in terms of hearing it for the first time and instantly going, wow, that's now one of my favorite songs. You should listen to it. I'm probably playing it during this segment actually. Hearing the accordion or whatever take over the melody as Kiki flies toward the city for the first time. Did I mention that this movie's actually like really good and you should watch it? It feels stupid to say, but this movie captures what humanity is like. Think about it. The movie is just a good person doing good things for other people and becoming friends with them, only for them to do good things back to her later in the movie when she was the one needing help. Okay, so it's time to talk about the old lady now. This old lady perfectly sums up everything good that I like about this movie. So we spend like 10 minutes watching her befriend this old lady and her friend as they bake a pie for her granddaughter's birthday party. Initially, the lady was just gonna pay Kiki the full agreed upon price and let her leave because the pie wasn't ready, but instead she decided to stay and help. So we already like this woman, and we only like her more as she keeps being nice for the rest of the scene. But then, spoilers, when Kiki delivers the pie, we get this delightful little scene.
Oh no, I told Grandma I didn't want that.
Hey, what'd you get?
Oh, Grandma sent me another one of her crummy herring pies again.
Yummy herring pie.
Will you please sign this receipt for me? I hate Grandma's stupid pies.
Those clips combined were like 15 seconds long, and it had more emotion than probably half of all the movies we've ever done on this channel, and that wouldn't have been the case if we hadn't just spent all that time with the grandmother. The movie just knows how to make people feel things, and of course, this moment here is what pushes Kiki over the edge and makes her wonder, why in God's name am I even doing this? Why am I giving up things I want to do this instead? And like I already said, her issues in this movie are burnout and depression, which, believe it or not, are also human. Even small things like Kiki walking past girls with the new hip fashion or whatever while she's only wearing a black robe and you can tell that she's self-conscious about it. Or even the scene where she sees the baker's husband walking out while she's in the bathroom, so she just hides there until he leaves and then runs and stumbles back up the stairs. It's just little things that make these fake people feel like not fake people. People in movies don't come with preset traits, and worlds in movies don't come with preset features. You have to make them, and I feel like they just did that in every possible place. I actually only really have 2 issues with this movie. First, I really wish there was some sort of falling action. It's been a thing in these movies where it just ends as soon as the climax stops, but here it kind of sucks like a lot more. The Hindenburg 2 Electric Boogaloo, or Gas Boogaloo, was fun to watch, but that doesn't really wrap up what the movie was about, and it feels like we don't get any closure for the characters, so that kind of sucks. The second issue I have is that I can't stand the idea that Kiki can't talk to her cat anymore. Just because she's matured over the course of the movie doesn't mean she's lost her immaturity or inner child completely or anything like that. Are you suggesting that adults have all lost their immaturity? Because if you are, That's so dumb. Also, it just makes me kind of sad because this is one of the only times this talking animal thing has actually been done correctly, and I like him a lot here. But those two things really are my only problems with this movie. It's about as perfect as you can get. It might seem like I was too nice to it, but if you watch it, I promise you'll see that I'm really not. But if you don't really like it like me, that's fine. Because guess what? Liking a movie is a subjective thing. I just think this movie's fun. It's good looking, it has great characters, Kiki's depression arc is paced about as well as it can be, and it goes below The Lion King and above Toy Story. I've seen better movies before, but none of its issues affect my thorough enjoyment of it, so the bar is pretty high for the next one.
I am so confused right now.
Can you believe we've crossed into the 90s already? Anyway, only yesterday. That's a very vague title, so that limits what I can do in terms of predictions. I'm guessing it's gonna be about, like, looking forward instead of behind you, so, like, whoa, that was only yesterday, and there's a whole bunch of tomorrows ahead of me. It's gonna be some garbage like that. I also have no clue if this one's good. I'll look it up after, so it should be an event. Turns out I had it completely backwards. The message is that you absolutely should dwell in the past. Your abusive past. I'm very conflicted about this movie. Basically, this is about a woman who goes to the countryside and realizes that she hates who she's become. So basically a Hallmark movie, except unlike Hallmark movies, this is actually good. I just don't like it. Well, okay, that's not entirely fair. I do like this movie, but love it? Yeah, no. I respect it more than anything. This is a Phase 2 movie incarnate, and that's a good thing in my opinion. It's purely focused on Taiko's journey of rediscovering who she really wants to be, except it's actually focused on showing us all of the miserable things that happened to her as a child. And it did make me feel miserable, which I think is good. Was that the goal? If not, oops. Seriously though, these flashbacks are very good. They made me sympathize with Taiko so much because she's the only person who's even nice. All of these vignettes feel so realistic too. Like, I can imagine all of these situations really happening. One of them talks about puberty, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable or anything. It just feels wholesome, well, for like 5 seconds, and then it gets really perverted and messed up. Seeing a kid wrenching a dodgeball away from a girl and saying, "Oh boy, that was close, I could have caught your period," just annoys me, which again, was probably the point. And don't get me started on Taiko's family. I never got the feeling that any of them truly love her or even like her. The mom feels incredibly real because she only ever focuses on the things Taiko does wrong, like how she interrupts her talking about her essay was so good it was put up on the wall, to scold her about how she didn't eat her lunch. The line is, "I think it's better to be a girl who eats what she's given than a girl whose essay is a little bit better than everyone else's." Damn. Meanwhile, both of the sisters are selfish and cruel, especially this one, and for a while I thought the dad was nice at least, but oh wait! The other part of this movie is in the present, where grown-up Taiko is basically being haunted by memories of her childhood, which fair enough, because it's terrible, but we're gonna get to that, and is going on vacation to the countryside to help do menial labor on this safflower farm. It's semi-interesting. She ends up semi-falling in love with this organic farming guy Toshio, and she ends up really liking her time there. But then towards the end, this old lady pressures her to stay and marry Toshio, and then everyone gets into an argument about it that she is not a part of. Seeing the parallel of Taiko just sitting there sadly while everyone argues about her as if she wasn't there, both in the present and in the past, was just really sad and a pretty interesting idea. But then at the end, she decides to be true to herself and stay there, I think. Now, I like all of that. All of those things are pretty good. Those themes are really cool, and quite a few of them are a bit relatable. Not the abusive childhood part, but you know what I mean. My only problem with this movie, well, not my only problem, is that it all feels so disjointed that it pretty much erases any chance I had of genuinely loving this movie. This way of telling the story, going back and forth between two time periods, can just very easily feel that way, and even though pacing-wise it was fine, these two halves of the story to me did not feel connected at all. They felt like two different stories, which in my opinion, kinda messed up what the movie was trying to accomplish, and I know I'm gonna have people thinking, well, that's your opinion, because it's actually a good movie. I know it's my opinion. That's why I'm here. That's my job here. And again, I still like this movie. Takahata is, I think, who made this, and he's really good at making scenes where you can just feel a lot of emotion, and I definitely did feel depressed and sad for Taiko in this movie, especially in the flashbacks, and the simpler art style they use there, along with rounder eyes and smaller mouths to show that it's a memory and that she's more innocent, is really cool. Sometimes there's barely even anything in frame, and I like that choice. I do like this movie, but like My Neighbor Totoro, I definitely don't love it. which makes me feel kind of guilty because I know everyone else does, but like, it's not like I have no reason. Like, the flashbacks are all about her terrible childhood. All of these memories are meant to be sad, aren't they? Overhearing your mom saying that you're not a normal child, probably because you were dropped as a baby, that's meant to be sad, right? Right? But then in the present, she says that she needs to stop feeling sorry for herself like she always used to as a kid, and start doing what she wants to with her life. What? Feeling sorry for yourself? Did I miss something here? Is that what we're saying this is? That's a terrible message. That message is terrible. That's so awful. And then adult Taiko's whole arc is that she isn't happy with her job and wants to spend her life in a place where she's happy. And even though that on its own is also a good story, and even though she inspires people there by telling these stories about her childhood, what other connection is there to her childhood? What part of these flashbacks suggests that the solution to her problems is to stay in touch with nature at a farm? The part where she's sad she doesn't have a home village to go on vacation to like the other kids for like 5 seconds? What part of her remembering all of these abusive things about her childhood tells her that she's unhappy with her life at like a 9 to 5 now? What? She figures that out on her own. It has nothing to do with that. This doesn't make any sense. I don't know, this movie's really weird for me to talk about. Please comment about how stupid I am and how I missed the whole point of the movie, you idiot, because I want to love this. I easily could, but I just don't really. I thought it was gonna be a movie about being nostalgic for childhood, and it is, and that's the problem. Because her childhood was mainly her hearing the rest of her family debating if they should get her IQ tested on the other side of the room, where she can clearly hear them because she doesn't understand dividing fractions, and that means she's got some serious mental disorder or something like that. Oh boy, the good old days, I feel so nostalgic for that, don't you? Which really doesn't add up to me. And on top of that, it's also a movie about leaving the hustle and bustle of city life for a peaceful, idyllic life in the country, which is obviously totally connected to the other story somehow, which also doesn't add up to me. Even though I like both of these stories a lot, in my personal opinion, they don't really mesh together in the way I think they were supposed to. That doesn't mean I hate the movie, obviously. Just because I like the parts and not the whole doesn't eliminate any value this movie has for me, except for all of the really long car scenes. It's still paced well. It just means that this could have been one of my favorites, and the way it was structured, I just didn't really love it. I'm just gonna put it below King of Thieves and above Rescuers Down Under. The reason some movies that might be realistically worse are above it is that, to me, those movies are just a bit better at being what they're trying to be. I like what this movie's trying to be, but I just don't think it was successful. If the movie was just the past or just the present part, especially if it was just the past part because the present part's kind of boring, everything would have flowed so much better, but the way it is now, it feels like two short stories are being told at the same time, and they're insisting that they're part of the same cinematic universe. We get 10 minutes of people sitting in a car talking about how the two stories are connected. Then we get 10 minutes of people sitting in a field talking about how the two stories are connected. Then we get 10 more minutes of people sitting in a car insisting that the stories are connected. That's a quarter of the movie. It feels like such a waste at the end of the day. Whatever, this is just a movie that makes you think more than anything. And regardless of how well I thought it was strung together, it certainly did that. I've been here for a while, so I guess we can consider this another win as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. The next one, though, sounds, worse.
What if you hypnotize him and make him think he's a pig?
We are doing Porco Rosso now. So, Porco, pork, pig? A pig? What's Rosso then? I don't know. Maybe it's about a magic pig, like the Black Cauldron? That sounds really awful. Anyway, let's go. If Only Yesterday was a good movie with okay execution, then Porco Rosso is an okay movie with great execution. Somehow, this movie about a World War I dogfighter who gets cursed to turn into a pig isn't the worst thing I've ever seen. In fact, it's actually a pretty good movie. For someone who cannot find it within themselves to be remotely interested in any war movies at all, I was fully on board with the wacky shenanigans of this omnivorous, domesticated hoofed mammal, commonly known as... Oh, you have got to be kidding me. This isn't a movie that's trying to do a whole lot, and because of that, there's not really much wrong with it. I thought that Porco was going to be really hateable, but I actually like him quite a bit. His design was the thing I was worried most about, because how are you going to make that look good? But they did. I think what ties it all together is the mustache, and Michael Keaton. He kind of just looks like a fat guy with some nose and ear deformities. And it's kind of funny how his only trait is that he thinks women are stupid.
Are you leaving because I'm a woman? Or is it because I'm too young?
Actually, it's both, kiddo.
Okay, that's fair.
Exactly. Wait, what? He just makes comments like that every so often, and then people respond with obvious comments about how he's a pig. Oh boy, I wonder if there's some sort of symbolism there. But it's still just more funny than anything. If 12-year-old boys get their hands on this movie, the YouTube short Sigma edits will never stop. I kinda wish we had gotten to see him break the curse, though. I mean, he at least has some sort of character arc in this movie, which is cool, and it is very heavily implied that he did break it, so we basically know that he did. But a lot of the stuff in the ending voiceover, I would have preferred to actually see. I don't know why these movies keep doing this, but I like some of the other characters too. I like Fio a lot, and except for the weird thing these movies do where every man wants to instantly marry her, she's a pretty decent advocate for the unpopular opinion that women actually have the ability to process information. This is me back in editing to say that honestly, because of the whole woke thing, which makes it impossible to have a movie with women in it without being criticized, the constant sexist jokes might honestly be the best way to show this message, because we're not meant to agree with him, and he learns his lesson, and we obviously know that he's wrong, but I don't know, it still gives the critical drinker something to enjoy. Yeah, I said it. And I like the Italian stereotype guy, too. I don't really like Gina, though. The fact that she and Porco used to be, like, friends or whatever is cool. And the bet she made is kind of interesting, but other than that, she's kind of just taking up space. And the villains are okay. I like that there's this guy from Texas who can outgun all of the Italians, which is the only stereotype in this movie that's actually true. But none of these pirates really have a motivation except that they don't like Porco, which, like, okay, but that's kind of flimsy, I don't know. Compared to the other movie we've seen that had pirate villains, it's even more apparent. But if I'm being honest, the huge issues with the movie stop there. The feel of this movie is totally different from all of the others. For one, it has a protagonist that isn't a teenage girl, which is the first movie so far, except for Grave of the Fireflies, which, well, that's not really the same type of movie as this. And for two, this is like an action-adventure movie. They managed to make the aerial battles way more interesting. The more of these movies I watch, the more I realize how much I just don't like Nausicaä. And the climax was decent too. The idea of Porco and Texas Man facing off in front of all of these people like some sort of show is kind of weird, but like so is this movie, and they do some fun things with it. I like that the middle part of the movie is more quiet so that we can learn more about Porco, plus the whole plane rebuilding thing was just fun. You'd think it'd be boring, but it honestly was not at all, and the flashback scene in heaven or whatever came out of nowhere and really surprised me, but it was cool. The whole thing is just paced way better than you'd expect. And the movie still looks good, too. Porco's little secret beach is really beautiful, the cities all look really nice, and even though a lot of the movie takes place in small dungeon-y spaces, they're all so detailed and just add to the vibe of the world even more. The planes have a lot of cool designs, and the water interacts with them pretty realistically. Except for Porco, the designs are kinda weird though, and Joe Hisaishi is back for the music, which is still good obviously, but this isn't a magical movie for the most part, so he takes more of a background role here. This movie's just solid. Even though the central conflict isn't super interesting, and even though there are a few lines that could have been workshopped a bit longer.
So you're giving me the job? Oh, thank you for trusting a woman.
There's not enough space in there, even with your tiny butt. Now take out a gun.
Thank you! And you know, my butt is bigger than it looks.
It's still fun. It's got good characters, it's funny, it's exciting, and it didn't bore me out of my mind. In fact, it's better at being what it is than only yesterday. Let's put it below Santa Claus is Coming to Town and above Anastasia. Anastasia's another movie with a kinda lame villain, but this movie just suffered because of that less, and Santa Claus is Coming to Town has this penguin in it. No penguins in this movie, sorry, I don't make the rules. If you like Ghibli movies and haven't seen this one, give it a try, and if not for all of the various womanizings, I'd probably even recommend that you show it to your kids. Certified epic movie, but next time I need a fix of anthropomorphic pig with a mustache and an Italian name during the 1900s, I'll just reread Animal Farm. I've made that joke twice now.
This is the most obnoxious thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Get out of here. We're watching Ocean Waves now. I'm pretty sure that this is one people don't like, but I'm gonna try to go and bias-free, because if there's a chance I'm gonna like a movie, I'm gonna try to give that chance a chance. Yeah, that makes sense. From what I've heard, there aren't that many ocean waves in this movie, but what it lacks in waves, it makes up for in gay people. Not sure if I'll really get that vibe, but the internet apparently did, and the internet's never wrong, so... Alright, so I remember how I said that Porco Rosso wasn't really trying to say a whole lot and was just a fun movie? Yeah, Ocean Waves isn't saying anything, and it's not like I was really having fun with it either. So what does this movie have, besides maybe gay people? I don't know, like, Nausicaä I just thought was boring because everything was developed so shallowly, but otherwise it didn't really make a lot of huge mistakes. But this movie, no, it's just straight up bad. I think it's just a bad movie. I just don't like it. No one learns any lessons, and things kind of just happen. The movie's only 70 minutes long, which I'm not going to complain about, because any longer, and I would have drowned myself in some ocean waves. But hilariously, even though the movie just dragged on forever, so much stuff just happened too fast. Any parts where even the slightest bit of character development could have happened were skipped right past. Like at the start, the guys are both in a classroom together, then it skips forward to presumably a while later, and they've apparently just had a whole conversation we don't get to hear, because the main character tells Glasses Guy, "Amazing, you have your life planned out 20 years into the future," or something like that. Then there's a voiceover saying, "I always thought of Glasses Guy differently from my other friends after that." Oh, okay, are we just moving on then? Seems like that would have been a good chance to learn something, anything, about either of these main characters. You thought of him differently from then on? You're just gonna tell us that and not show us anything? You know, there's a quote about telling and showing, and I can't quite remember what it is. Maybe we'll come back to it. We're just meant to pretend we saw them interacting and calculate that they're good friends. So what does this mean? You know what I like more than short, bad movies? Longer, coherent movies. Also, there isn't a single good character in this movie. It's the anti-Kiki's delivery service. This girl is a selfish, barely even human individual. She's constantly demanding stuff from other people, and she never learns her lesson. She comes back from her dad's house one time and she's crying, and it sounds like something terrible has happened. Oh no! But it turns out that he just changed the wallpaper in her room to a color she doesn't like. She had moved out. The movie ends with a montage of all of her happy memories with the main character, leading him to the conclusion that he loved her all along. But every single thing in the montage was her being negative, because every single thing she ever said in the whole movie was negative. Even on the movie poster, they both look absolutely miserable, because they're never happy in this movie, ever. But they love each other. Huh? This Glasses Guy doesn't have a single thing about him. He just punches the main character in the face because he didn't stop the other girls at the school from calling out the annoying girl on her BS. Then the next time we see him, it's months later, and he's just happy again. And I wouldn't have any problem if the movie just let them be gay after that, but instead they cut away from this scene here too before anything can even happen. We just get more voiceover saying, "We stayed there for almost an hour." Can you show us that? And by the way, this is the only scene in the movie with an ocean. And guess what there isn't? Waves! There's no waves! What is the movie called? The movie's called Ocean Waves. Where are my waves? It's the ocean. Where are the waves? Huh? And the main character, he can honestly just best be summed up as Guy. He does not have an iota of character to him, and he does not make a single rational decision in the whole movie. I hate that because of you, there are rumors about me, so I'm gonna 5-star you in the middle of the school hallway, because that totally fixes that problem. No one will be talking about me now. You absolute buffoon. I don't care if she slapped you first. You can't do that. And is something wrong with my version of this movie, or does it actually just zoom out into the endless void like this ever so often? If that's intentional, why is it intentional? And I think my version is busted anyway, because sometimes you can hear the cicada sound in the background literally stop and start the loop over. There's a pause, and then it loops back to the start of the soundbite. I seriously hope that's in the real movie, but I don't think so. The more I think about it, the more I realize that this is just a Wattpad fanfiction. The constant sexy comments so that people don't lose interest, the making fun of accents thing, which just feels very tee-hee, this is romantic probably, I don't know, I'm 14. The excessive internal monologuing that would translate to about half of all the lines being in italics. All of the, of course you act like that, you're a man, you're a woman, whatever, which is something I've become much less tolerant of after reading the first half of The Wheel of Time and then taking a break for 6 months. It all just feels like something a 16-year-old girl would write after a breakup with her boyfriend named Brody. A line in the movie is literally, "The whole thing was starting to feel like a bad soap opera," a voiceover line of course, and like, are you trying to be self-aware right now, or is that just a ridiculously ironic sentence that shows how unself-aware you really are? Honestly, that line sums up this whole experience so well that I have nothing left to say. Let's just put it below Bambi and above the Black Cauldron. Yes, it is that low. Do not watch this movie ever. Nausicaa was boring, but this movie was such a complete failure in every way that by the end, some scenes had me actively clenching my jaw. It's painful to watch. So painful that I'd almost rather watch 2 hours of literal nothingness that I don't understand the premise of. Stay away. Alright, seeing the Japanese equivalent of your average stereotypical cheesy tropey high school movie is all well and good, but for real, can we watch more good stuff now? Please?
Can I put my balls way down deep inside your jaw?
Much more of this, and I might go insane, but so far the majority of these have been good, and after this there are only 3 more, so that's kinda cool. Anyway, I don't know what Pom Poko is about, and there's not really any easy way I can figure out what it's about. Up until I saw My Neighbor Totoro, I thought the big fluffy guy himself was in this movie. I had no reason to think that, I just did. He seemed like his name could be Pom Poko. I know there's one with raccoons and stuff, and that might be this one, I don't really know. It can't be worse than the last one though, right? I need to stop saying stuff like that. Have you ever seen Furry Vengeance? Is this movie with Brendan Fraser in it, and it's one of those family movies where the dad is way too focused on work and his wife and homesick teenage son end up hating him, which you can see various permutations of all throughout the last 15 years or so. But in that movie, it's because he's the only one who can see every animal in the forest ruining his life, mainly this raccoon here. He works for a company that's tearing down forests to build new homes and stuff, and it has an environmental message, except it's actually interesting because the animals have zero problem killing any and all employees of this company in the most gruesome ways imaginable to defend their homeland. Why do I bring this up? Because Pom Poko is a vastly worse version of the exact same thing, except these aren't technically raccoons, and also they can shapeshift. So the dub keeps calling them raccoons, but they're actually tanuki, and they are real things. Like, tanuki exist in real life. Mario did not invent these. At least now there's an explanation for the balls, though, now. According to Wikipedia, apparently their balls are an integral part of tanuki folklore. That's a direct quote. An integral part. They even linked the article of what balls are on the page. Well, how kind of them. And yeah, I'm not gonna say that them using their balls as carpets, and them using their balls as parachutes, and them using their balls as weapons, and then using their balls as boats isn't the slightest bit weird, but it's also the best part of the movie, because these tanuki shenanigans are the only parts of the whole movie that make me feel anything at all. These guys kind of just mess around with the humans for 2 hours, and then when their current approach doesn't work, oh no, they have a council meeting to decide what their next approach should be. So then they spend the next 20 minutes trying that, and it happens like half a dozen times, I'm not even kidding. I liked it the first time, because it was the first time. By the 1 hour mark, I got the idea, and it was only halfway done. This is a 2 hour movie. It gets so repetitive that they genuinely could have ended things just as easily 50 minutes in instead of 2 hours in. I'm not kidding. There genuinely is only this one plot beat in the whole movie, and the only thing that separates the many different occurrences of it are stupid subplots like this old raccoon starting a dance cult and sailing away on a ship made out of his balls. It just feels like the movie's happening in slow motion. I knew where this was going the second it started, and I was not surprised by anything until the end, which we'll get to. With that being said, those first 30 minutes or so were so funny to me. They hadn't gotten boring yet, and so I was able to fully appreciate the full majesty of this movie. The scene where the red-coated raccoon jumped onto the windshield of a car and inflated his balls so that they filled the whole car and stopped the driver from being able to see, causing him to crash and killing 3 innocent people, so then the raccoons have a funeral for them, but they all start laughing halfway through and throw a party instead, but then they stop the party and debate whether they really want to stop the humans from destroying their land, because if the humans leave, they'll never get to eat fried chicken again, and then they get distracted and accidentally stampede over the red-coated raccoon and rupture all of his organs and hospitalize him for a year, is the greatest piece of art ever produced since Adam's first form billions of years ago. I don't really like their designs either. They just feel way too cartoony, and when the movie isn't being absolutely ridiculous, it's being serious, or attempting to be. That might be why the movie's so boring. We're looking at the main characters of a Disney Junior, maybe even Disney the Third TV show, mourning the loss of their home, and I just don't feel anything. But the movie just keeps doing it over and over. It's like a World War II movie featuring, like, the Muppets. Other than that, though, the movie looks really good, obviously. The forest looks really nice, and it reminds me a lot of Bambi. The music sounds like something you'd find in one of those 10 hours of calming music with nature photos videos, and, like, that's not a bad thing. What other nice things can I say about this movie? I like that one of these raccoons is voiced by J.K. Simmons, but because I can't tell any of them apart, I can never be sure when I'll hear his sweet, sultry voice. So I was just pleasantly surprised every so often by J. Jonah Jameson saying some absurd raccoon-related thing.
Raccoons, we should have a moment of silence for the unfortunate victims, and then, right after that, we can celebrate!
And this movie has its own version of the pink elephant scene from Dumbo, where the raccoons shapeshifted into whatever weird stuff the animators wanted to scare the ever-loving hell out of everyone in this town, and then they go, okay, that was fun, now let's 2012 these guys, and then they kill untold amounts of people, only for the CEO guy to take credit for it, which doesn't even make sense because his ass would be arrested, and also that never gets developed at all, and also why is this fox guy here, and also why does he look like those samurai paintings, and if this wasn't made by a Japanese studio, I'd definitely say that this is probably racist. Wait, I think I was supposed to be saying positive stuff about this movie. I guess I forgot. Oops. Oh yeah, I think the end is cool because they lose. The city gets built, the raccoons basically all die, some have to adapt to living in the sewers and stuff, some become just as bad as the people that oppressed them, some live as humans, you get the idea. And I feel like that's kind of the cool ending. Too bad it makes the rest of the movie where they're trying to stop it from happening more worthless than it already was, but that's fine. They could have just had the movie be about the last 10 minutes and it would have been way better, but who cares? It's fine. This movie is fine, but like, it's really not, though. There isn't even a main character, so I just get to feel nothing for the maximum amount of people. The plot just goes in circles, to the point where it barely exists, and the small amount of ridiculousness is pathetic, compared to the monsoons of sludge that this movie insists is a real story. I'd even go so far as to call it filler, and there's no ironic enjoyment here to save this. Ironic enjoyment is for movies that are realistically bad, but are so consistent at it that I can just enjoy marveling at how terrible it is. But this movie is just so boring and so inconsistent at everything that I don't think anything can save it. This movie goes below the Black Cauldron and above Bedknobs and Broomsticks, but wait, how is this worse than Ocean Waves? Well, realistically, it isn't at all. Ocean Waves was short but infuriating, but Pom Poko is long and even longer-winded, and that's the type of movie I just can't bear to make myself watch, regardless of actual quality, which in this case also isn't the best. Do I need to mention the balls thing again? And Nausicaä is still worse because at least I know what this movie's about, and I had some happy experiences while watching it. I think that's why the divide between the Ghibli movies I like and don't like is so huge. They're all so long that if they strike out and don't do something interesting, it all backfires horribly. It doesn't matter. If I didn't know that the next one is Shay Fearless's favorite Ghibli movie ever, I'd make some sort of dramatic clickbait YouTuber comment about the Ghibli Dark Age or something, but if I happen to despise this next one, you can have that comment to look forward to.
Let's go!
High bar for this one then, although I'm pretty sure Shay Fearless also said that even though Whisper of the Heart is his favorite Ghibli movie, he doesn't think it's the best, so I guess we can lower it a little bit. I don't know much about this one except that it has country roads in it, so let's jump in. This video has sapped all my energy. This is the 10th movie and we still have more after this. Jesus Christ, I'm tired.
Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
You know the difference between really liking a movie and loving a movie? It's the feeling you get when you watch it, and I can't really explain what it is. It's the feeling I get when I watch Beauty and the Beast, or Encanto, and more recently, The Prince of Egypt. You can really like a movie and not feel it in your soul. I thought The Little Mermaid was actually pretty good when I saw it for the first time for this series, but I don't love it. Both Toy Stories that we've done so far are top tier movies, but I don't love them either. Keeping all of that in mind, understand how huge it is when I say that I love Whisper of the Heart. Even with the bar that high, it still wasn't high enough. This movie absolutely blew me away. There wasn't a single scene that didn't have me fully invested. Even though the first half hour is slower, every single thing introduced was brought back later. And even then, it was still so interesting to me that I was halfway through when I could have swore I was only 20 minutes in. The themes and messages in this movie are delivered perfectly. Only Yesterday faltered with that in a few places, but this movie doesn't. This is just another example of something that not only knows what it wants to say, but also says it, which is the hardest part. And I think that means that even if you don't instantly and 100% understand Shizuku in every scene like I did, you'll still be able to like this movie a lot. I mean, The Prince of Egypt is a movie about a relationship between two siblings falling apart, and even though my sister and I still tolerate each other as much as you can expect, that didn't stop me from loving that movie. I think that this movie is just so good at showing and telling, but mostly showing, how everyone is feeling always, that I truly believe anyone is able to at least like it. And I hate the fact that it only has 18 critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and now literally one miserable sour person has taken it from 100 to a 94%. But me saying that you don't need to empathize to like this movie doesn't mean that I didn't empathize, because I definitely did. The country roads thing is kind of a weird idea, and I'll be the first to admit that, but you can tell that it's just Shizuku experimenting as a writer and trying to figure stuff out, and somehow they actually made different variations of the song interesting. And the second half of the movie leaves that behind for something better anyway. Speaking of which, that second half is where things go from good to great, and any slower moving parts just totally disappear. Seiji leaves for 2 2 months of training to be a violin maker in Italy, and it makes Shizuku realize that she still doesn't really know what she even wants to do with her life. And next to him, this guy who seems like he's got it all figured out, it's even more obvious that she's made essentially no meaningful progress in anything, and that she's doomed forever. And so she sets herself a goal that during the 2 months that he's gone, she'll write an entire book to prove to herself that she's good enough for him. And let me tell you, watching her kind of fall apart inside as the time ticks down, her grades slip, her relationship with her family gets weaker, and her motivation slowly trickles away after progress still isn't going as fast as she hoped despite all of her hard work, was probably the most I've ever related to any movie, not because I've experienced this particular thing, but because all the emotions that she's feeling are ones that everyone has felt, and they're just that visible. That's honestly the best way I can describe it. Like, here's an example. Every so often someone will compliment something she writes, and she adamantly disagrees and says that it sucks. I'm pretty sure that's just a universal experience. Everyone has said something like that before. And that is, I think, what is so impressive about this movie. Basically, no one has gone through this exact situation before, but by focusing on all the small things that basically everyone has gone through, pretty much anyone can not only sympathize, but empathize with it. And that's why everyone I know who's seen this movie says that they just loved watching it, because they felt like they could feel exactly what she was feeling. Seeing Shizuku start to cry once she's finished her book because it isn't absolutely perfect and because the old man didn't say it was his absolute favorite book ever of all time is something that can probably extract some sort of emotion from almost everyone. And the cool thing is that all of those people can feel like the movie was made for them specifically. This is the closest a movie has gotten to making me cry in my not child life, just because every scene is so good at showing exactly what Shizuku is feeling that we can feel it just as strongly right alongside of her. And it's not like she's the only good character, like Seiji. I think I kind of took for granted how much I liked Seiji while I was watching the movie, but once I thought about it more, I kind of realized how actually good their relationship is, and not like in the sense that they have chemistry, even though they do. I just mean that they come together in a supernatural way, and instead of doing a stupid third act breakup in the second act, which they had a chance to do by the way, and cut away instead, they just end up getting separated basically by chance. The conflict isn't Shizuku trying to see if Seiji is really who he says he is and if he's worth it. The conflict is Shizuku having to find out who she really is so that she can prove that she's worth it. In an era where a movie with a romance is more likely than not to have a contrived argument, I love the way everything just clicks together here so much. Even though we don't know the most about Seiji, he still acts like a real and likable person. And somehow when the end of the movie hits us with the declaration of love, instead of trying to piece together how we even got here like I usually do, I was just vibing, dude. I just felt like people I knew were finally happy, and I guess we do kinda know them, right? The scene where the two of them are just singing and the old man and all his friends join in is so good that I don't even have the words to describe it. Like, I actually sat down for several minutes and tried to think of words and could not think of them. Even the best friend side character has a background romance. In most movies, the best friend doesn't even have traits, but of course they had to go the extra mile with her too, just like they did with everything else. Honestly, I feel like the amount of blushing in this movie is justified by how perfect the love is in like every aspect of this movie. Speaking of which, the animation here is oddly perfect. Like, it's even better than before, and it leads to so much magic. The fantasy sequences in this movie are breathtaking. The first one actually made me gasp, so they're literally breathtaking, because I literally was not expecting this to be a part of the movie. They're a really good way of showing what Shizuku's story is actually about, but more importantly, they just look so cool. Sometimes they even just throw in random magic moments just for the fun of it, like the scene where the old man is describing the story taking place inside this giant clock that has no bearing on anything, but is still just there. Even random quotes resonated with me so much that they felt like they had magic, even though there was realistically none there and it was basically just a normal sentence, like every single time that old man brought up geodes. Remember what I said before about how fast the movie went by? I checked the time and it said it was 50 minutes in, but I could have sworn I was 20 minutes in like 10 minutes ago, and I thought the time accidentally glitched forward, so I spent like a minute minus 10 seconds back until I realized that I was just so interested in every facet of the story that it was almost halfway over before I knew it. The boring half, because this movie just gets better as it goes along. And there's still stuff I haven't even mentioned, like how much I like the family and how This is the only movie Yoshifumi Kondo directed before he died, which may or may not have indirectly killed the studio now that Miyazaki is retired and Takahata is also dead. By the way, I'm totally watching The Boy and the Heron when the dub comes out. It looks so cool. You get it. I kinda like Whisper of the Heart. I think it's kind of a good movie. Not only is this better than Kiki's delivery service, but it's also better than Pom Poko. I know, aren't you shocked? I legitimately have zero major issues with this movie. Even with Kiki, I had some. It's one of the few movies on this list that I just love unconditionally, and it goes below The Prince of Egypt and above Toy Story 2. But I'd still probably rather watch Kiki depending on the day, just because sometimes you're not in the mood for emotions and you just want good vibes, in which case that movie's perfect. But that doesn't change the fact that this was amazing. It's not my absolute favorite animated movie of all time, but it was still a genuinely transcendent experience. 10 out of 10, you should immediately watch it right after this video. Are there really only 2 movies left in this video? Cool. Anyway, Princess Monkey. I know it's one everyone likes, but after Nausicaä, I have a sneaking suspicion that I'm gonna dislike this one a lot. I don't really know what it's about, so I'm gonna guess it's a fantasy movie about a princess with ninja reflexes who takes back her kingdom and says it's Mononoke time, and then Mononoke is all over the bad guys. Yippee! Dude, this movie is so cool. I mean, it's still kind of bad, but that fact is second to the fact that this movie is just objectively epic. It's like a better version of Nausicaä. They do actually have a lot in common. Like the fact that I didn't really understand some of it. Like, it's more bearable here because this movie isn't really meant to be watched for characters or plot and is just meant to be watched for sheer coolness. But that doesn't change the fact that whenever I'm not being shown sheer coolness, I was kind of bored. So, what didn't I understand? Well, I don't really know who the main character is, and we never find out. He's just a guy. I don't really know who this villain lady is, except she works for an emperor we never see and owns an iron factory and hates nature. I don't really know who Princess Mononoke is, or why she's called that, or where she came from. She's a human who's been adopted by wolves or something, but we never get any more explanation than that. And if her real name is San, which by the way is the number 3 in Japanese, where did the name Princess Mononoke come from? She's not a princess of anything, and according to Wikipedia, the Mononoke are what these demon blobs are called, but she's not related to them at all either. And why is the movie called Princess Mononoke if she's not even the main character? What is the main character's name? It's probably just a nitpick though, and they keep talking about someone named Asano, and I don't know who that is. I hope that's not the main character, but if it is, that's hilarious. It's just another situation where I wasn't really sure how everything connected, and I actually want to go back to what I said about how this movie isn't meant to be watched for characters or plot, and yeah, if it was, the characters would be actually good, or developed, which they aren't. Like, the villain lady, I wasn't even sure if she was gonna be the villain for a lot of the movie. That's how bad it is. And then at the end, she abruptly turns around and decides that she loves nature now and is gonna build a good village, which is almost a direct quote, and that's so funny. And, like, whatever, I guess. And the main character doesn't really have, like, traits or, like, a personality, and he has, like, Herculean strength and can basically do anything. And at one point, he literally just punches the evil lady and knocks her out instantly. And then, like, 5 seconds later, he punches Princess Mononoke and then knocks her out instantly, so there's no stakes ever. And also, he can survive getting shot through the spine, so that's kind of weird. Basically, anytime the movie was trying to do anything with the characters, I was super bored. And also, anytime I wasn't seeing something super weird and cool in the forest, I was also bored. It kind of sounds like drugs, but, like, I mean, it's kind of like drugs, but we're gonna get to that. Like, if you're gonna dedicate this much time to talking about these boars attacking the humans, at the very least, you could actually show that attack, right? And this whole first part of the movie in the Ironworks was just so uninteresting to me. These are all the same issues I had with Nausicaä, so what saves Princess Mononoke? Well, every so often, it just randomly decides to be the most insane and awesome thing I've ever seen. This movie looks beautiful. This normal forest looks 10 times more appealing than Nausicaa's toxic forest, and the creatures have these super cool designs. This demon sludge that just looks like a bunch of worms and has the ability to seep into your bones and kill you slowly. Dude, that's awesome. These little golem things that make sounds like ice cubes rattling in a glass are awesome, and don't get me started on the Deer God. The Deer God is the best part of the movie, and also any movie. It's not even close. He's the best thing. He takes like 3 different forms throughout the movie, and every single time he's on screen, the sheer creepiness and magic and oh my god, what am I looking at right now, surrounding him instantly makes me forget how much this movie kind of sucks otherwise. There are some scenes with the deer god that had my jaw literally on the floor. That is something that does not happen that often, but this is the creepiest thing I've ever seen. Somehow, this entity feels exactly like what the god of a forest would feel like, and because of him, the climax is actually cool this time, despite being pretty similar in length to the bad movie. This whole last quarter has some of the most stunning visuals I've ever seen. The deer god freaks me the hell out, man, and I cannot enunciate this point enough. Plus, this movie has so much gratuitous violence that it just becomes objectively better and more interesting. Like, the main character knocks people's heads clean off their shoulders with arrows on screen multiple times, and that's cool, and also how is that possible? It's an arrow. This movie's just kind of weird to talk about, because on the one hand, it's the coolest experience I've ever had, and on the other hand, it's long beyond all reason, and so whenever something not breathtaking is happening, I'm physically falling asleep, and the movie is 2 hours long. How do you reconcile those two things and decide how the movie ranks for you? For now, I'm gonna put it below Aladdin and above Castle in the Sky. Castle in the Sky had way more stuff that I liked, but the stuff in this movie that works so well that I would genuinely sit through over an hour of slog to get to the good stuff. It is that awesome. Even though it has the same issues as Nausicaä, that was a movie full of nothingness, and this is a movie full of kind of somethingness. A lot of those things were absolutely mind-numbing, but a lot were some of my favorite animated scenes of all time. A pretty big chunk of my issues with this movie are kinda just irrelevant because of that, and that's kinda weird, but I don't know. Because again, no one's watching this movie for the characters, who we don't know anything about, or the plot, which we kinda know something about. We watch it for the dopeness, and even though a lot of this movie is just boring with no dopeness to be found, that's honestly okay, because Princess Mononoke is unironically the coolest thing ever.
They're your neighbors, Bert. Hence the words, welcome, neighbors.
My Neighbors the Yamadas seems like a pretty underwhelming way to end the second most emotionally exhausting video I've ever made, the first being episode 8, which was exhausting for the opposite reason. Actually, the last one was kind of exhausting too. Maybe I'm just exhausted. Anyway, I think that this is the one with the weird art style, so my prediction, which I've been forgetting to do, is that it's about someone who meets their neighbors the Yamadas, and they teach them about the true meaning of something. I think I remember why I stopped doing these. Anyway, let's watch it, and then I can go to bed. This movie is the best movie in this video that starts with my neighbor, and it's also the best movie in this video composed of a bunch of vignettes. I don't know, I just really like this movie. I think it's really cute. I humbly apologize for slandering it a minute ago. It's actually super good. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like the comic strip aesthetic, but I got used to it super fast, and dare I say it, it works even better than traditional animation in some places, and it certainly doesn't stop the movie from being wildly creative with its visuals when it wants to be. And I actually really like the vignette style of this movie. It probably suits what the movie was trying to accomplish better than it suited what Only Yesterday was trying to accomplish. The whole movie is just little vignettes about this family, and that's it. Some of them are longer, but a lot of them are actually pretty short, and a lot don't really tell complete stories, just little snippets of them. I mean, some are complete, like the first one where they accidentally leave their daughter at the mall, but most aren't, like the one where the grandmother insists that she can make beef stroganoff only to realize that she can't, and so they order sushi. The whole thing lasts about 90 seconds, so if the movie isn't focused on plot, and it definitely isn't because it absolutely does not have one, what is the point of this movie? The point of this movie is to feel good. I'll touch more on this in a second, but this family is actually super healthy. There are basically no overarching conflicts. This is just a movie where we meet a family at the start and then learn a little bit about each of the members as it continues. Every tiny little vignette attaches us to this family a bit more, and even the basic ones still pack some emotional weight. There are multiple scenes in this movie that felt so human and so real that I had to pause the movie and just think for a minute. Like, could the movie be a bit shorter? Like, I guess, but at the same time, it could have been 1 minute and it would have been working toward the same end goal. The way this movie is laid out, there really is no maximum or minimum time. It can just keep going forever, and if we care about the characters enough, it won't matter. And it didn't. I didn't really want to stop watching. It just felt like I was binging a season of TV about a family doing family things, which is helped a lot by how absolutely impossibly good the family dynamic is. From the very beginning, I was surprised by how wholesome this family was, even when everyone is stressed out because they lost their 4-year-old child. Instead of the dad being a terrible person who hates his kids and the mom being an idiot who blindly agrees with him and justifies his abusive actions and passively cleans the house, like every other movie, they're just super chill people. Like, they still feel negative emotions, like all the time, But they also play rock, paper, scissors to decide who has to go help do the dishes. Instead of the husband saying, "You'd better tidy up," he says, "We'd better tidy up." Like, gender rules are still brought up because this movie finds the time to briefly bring up everything, but more than anything, it just seems like everyone loves each other, and I'm not really used to seeing that. I don't know if I could even pick a favorite character. I mean, the daughter is my least favorite because they abandoned her after the first short, which is even funnier because as soon as this movie came out, the comics that it was based off of completely rebranded so that she was the main character, which is hysterical. But the other four, I honestly can't decide. I don't really have any issues with this movie. It's not being super ambitious in a lot of places, but it's still super charming, pretty interesting, and very funny, actually. I'm gonna put it below Ichabod and above The Secret of Nim. I'm not stressing about the rankings too much at the moment because I think between the 90s and the 2000s we can do some reordering, but that's where I'm gonna put it for now. And it's weird that before this decade, it would have actually been in second place, but when you think about it, it's actually not that weird at all. It's just really wholesome and fun. And original. This isn't a movie about family growth. It's a movie about a family. And that's it. And you know what? I'm perfectly okay with that. And bazinga bazoonga, that's 12 more movies done. Jesus Christ, that's a lot of movies. Here's my ranking. Nausicaä is the lowest. I had no idea what was going on, and it made me almost comatose. You absolutely shouldn't watch it. Pom Poko has nothing of value and is super repetitive. Ocean Waves just doesn't know how people work and is more irritating than anything. This one is realistically the worst. A huge jump up. Only Yesterday has a lot of good elements, but I just didn't like the way they tried to mesh them together. My Neighbor Totoro is a movie where nothing happens, but I don't really mind because it just kind of feels like a good dream. It's the Moo Moo Meadows of Ghibli. Porco Rosso was better than it had any right to be given its plot, but it still wasn't really anything special. Grave of the Fireflies is a masterclass in making your audience feel sad. Castle in the Sky is really funny and pretty interesting, but Act 2 is kind of boring. Princess Mononoke has like 3 good parts, but they're all so good that it makes me like the movie way more than I should. My Neighbors the Yamadas somehow manages to be one of my favorite parts of this studio so far, despite being a movie about absolutely nothing. It's the Seinfeld of Ghibli, and yes, I'm coming up with all of these on the spot, can you tell? Kiki's Delivery Service has a really impactful message, a really cool world, really good characters, and fire music. And finally, Whisper of the Heart had me thinking about it for weeks after I saw it. Country Roads hasn't left my head in a month. This movie is the epitome of everything a movie can do. And honestly, I totally get why people watch anime now. I mean, I'm not going to be watching any Ace Attorney or One Piece or Death Note, or that's all the ones I know, but I definitely don't look at it in like the same way. In other words, I now have first-hand proof that all anime doesn't actually suck. I mean, I liked, what, 3/4 of these? I would be lying if I said this episode hasn't changed my outlook on anything at all. I mean, I went on vacation and saw a sign for Mount Pocono, and it took me multiple times to realize it didn't actually say Porco Rosso. In some small way, my life has changed. Every so often, I catch myself humming some Joe Hisaishi music. I realize that I kinda wanna watch My Neighbors the Yamadas again. You know how this long-ass video came out so fast relative to how long it is? Because it was super fun to make, dude. I was a doubter of the Studio Ghibli magic touch, but I can confirm that 3 out of 4 times, it is in fact there. That ratio might go down once we get into the Dark Ages, which may or may not exist. Whatever, we won't be getting to that until episode 23, oh god. Well, since that's kind of a long way away, how about I tell you what we're doing next episode? Surely we're into the 2000s by now, right? Right? No, you f***ing idiot, we're never getting out of the 1990s. Ever. But we're out of studios to do. We're not even in American ones now. What could we possibly have left to do? The short answer? The rest. The slightly longer answer? All of the other movies that didn't fit into the other videos, but I guess that means that our year-long quest to finish the 90s will be coming to a close very soon. And with that, I finally bid you adieu. Just don't watch Ocean Waves, please, I swear to God.